problem, Ben.
No problem.
Shantakaram Jagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasacham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmi Kantam Kamala Yogividyanagamyam Vande Vishnu Bhavabhayaharam Sarvalokaikanatham Vasudeva Sutam Devam Ramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Okay, Rajan bhai, back to you.
Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we'll just go through some historical aspect and then we'll come to what the slides are. So just think about, we will also cover some of the ideas that we had covered. So at least it gives you a synopsis of where we are. So just think about it. Upanishads were written by different people at different times and different centuries, many centuries apart. So there was no clearly defined philosophical school at the time. It was like a different people coming together and writing about different issues. What happened in the 6th, 7th century when Shankaracharya started writing the key principles of Upanishad, he extracted a principle called Kevala Dvaita Vedanta, where he basically equated Atman to Brahman and said that Jagat is Mithya. That was his first sort of delineation of the extract of Upanishads. As the time passed by over the next centuries, different acharyas came about and read the same scriptures and came with a different theory or different hypothesis. Ramanujacharya came around 1000 to 11th century and created a school called Vishishtadvaita, where I'm not going to go in detail about his school but right now, so understand. Then Madhavacharya came about 100 or 200 years later and created a dualist school. Then came Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and created Achintya Abhed school. Then came Vallabhacharya, the Vaishnavite sect that most of us belong to, around 15th century, and created Shuddha Advaita school. So that is how it happened. And all these schools were collectively called Vaishnavite schools. And their emphasis was on bhakti, while Shankaracharya's emphasis was on gnana. Then Madhusudan Saraswati came around 16th century. He was a classical Kevala Advaitist, but also was influenced by bhakti schools that preceded him over the last 400 or 500 years. So he also wrote treatise on bhakti aspect as well. So he used both things. So he defended Kevala Advaita. He also gave in the ground to bhakti school. So that's where we were until about 18th century. Came Christian missionaries in India. With British came the time. And they viewed, their idea primary was to how to convert Hindus to Christianity. That was primarily their aim. Primarily it was their aim. So what they did was they looked at Hindu scriptures and concluded Hindu scriptures is equal to Vedanta. And then concluded Vedanta is equal to Advaita Vedanta. And then they attacked Advaita Vedanta, and on the ground is that Advaita Vedanta says, I am God. And that is a blasphemy, saying that I am Father in the heaven, which is dumb. That is how they viewed. So their idea of equating Advaita Vedanta as the dominant school of India was to negate the effect and to make us feel is that Advaita Vedanta is dumb. Then came, there was a Aurangzeb's brother called Dara Shikoh, was a scholar, and he was actually killed by Aurangzeb later on. He basically created a group of people whom he asked to translate all these Upanishads into Persian, and they were written called Upanikhat. Instead of Upanishad, they were translated as Upanikhat in Persian. And from that point, it was translated by a French scholar called Desperaux around 18th century, 17th, 18th century, who translated it to Latin. And then those things came about to Germany. So when we learn that Germans were interested in Upanishads and all, that's how it happened. What was not known at that time is some of the commentaries of some of the translation of Upanishad also included Shankaracharya's commentary. So what they did not understand was that Upanishad and Shankaracharya's commentary are two separate entities per se. So they sort of looked at it, call it together, and came to conclude is that Advaita Vedanta is how Upanishads are meant to be. And some of them were impressed, some of them were not. But that's how the West came to know about all these Upanishads and Advaita Vedanta. Then came Vivekananda in 1893 when he went to America. And he basically, what he did was this. He understood that most of the Christianity is geared towards bhakti idea, devotional idea. So he did not want to create a situation where he will say, well, Hinduism talks about bhakti. Then they will say, then what the heck? I mean, we do the same thing. You do it for Krishna or Vishnu or Shiva. We do it for Christ. So what's the difference? So what he started doing was putting more emphasis on Advaita Vedanta as a philosophical aspect. So most of the West became more aware of Advaita Vedanta as a dominant part of Hindu philosophy. You know, he went to England and America more or less and taught Advaita Vedanta. And second part, he did not bring about the issue of Ramakrishna, RMK in America. He basically, to best of my knowledge, he only has mentioned RMK twice in the entire stay in the West. For the reason that RMK also was interested in Shaivism, Tantrism, and all the miracle kind of stuff. So he did not want to bring up those issues, and create controversy. So he basically concentrated primarily on Advaita Vedanta when he was talking in America and England as well. When he went back to India, he often emphasized Karma Yoga. And to the argument of many of the disciples of Ramakrishna, some of them were very unhappy about his emphasis on Karma Yoga, saying that God is what we are, God is this people. So help them create the schools, create monasteries, and create framework for treating and helping the poor people instead of just talking about sannyas only. So many of the Vedantic disciples of RMK weren't very happy, but that's what he emphasized in India. So bhakti and karma was part that he emphasized more in India, and unification of different religions. So that's how it happened. So that's basic story of how Advaita Vedanta became the dominant school in India as well as in America and West in general. And then came the next wave. Chinmayan came, and then Dayananda Saraswati came. So all those guys were primarily geared to Advaita Vedanta concept of Shankaracharya. So they emphasized that part. Having said that, Keval Advaita is a small portion of Hinduism, but is most intellectually known outside India as well as among the intellectual circle in India as well, though it is not necessarily the dominant school in general. So that's the basic idea of historical perspective. Now, if you want to understand the key difference between Keval Advaita and Vaishnavism is this. 4 or 5 major differences. One, Keval Advaita teaches is that Nirgun Brahman is the ultimate, formless, attributeless reality is the final destination. Sagun Brahman or Ishvara is an emanation of Nirgun Brahman. So it's a subsidiary of Nirgun Brahman. So that was one aspect. Vaishnava school will say exactly reverse. That Ishvara or God, whoever God you believe in, Vishnu or Krishna, is the ultimate reality, and Nirgun Brahman is part of them, or him or her, if you believe in Devi. So that's one aspect. In order to make it explainable, Shankaracharya also devised a scheme of reality differentiation called illusory reality, of dream reality, empiric reality, which is what we experience in day out, and absolute reality of the final destination. So 3 levels of reality. Most of the Vaishnava school will say, no, that doesn't hold the water. Third, in order to make it easier for him to explain, for Shankaracharya to explain, he created a framework where he will say, Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. That means Brahman is true and Jagat is illusion. That includes us as well. And absolute level, Jiva is equal to God, is equal to Brahman, Sagun Brahman. That's what he said. All the Vaishnavite school will reject that idea. All the Vaishnavite school say Brahma Satya, Jagat Satya. So that is the major difference. Another important aspect. Shankaracharya created a framework called Maya. In order for him to explain in a rational manner, he started saying that we perceive reality as what we see, but that is a product of a Maya. It's an illusion. Vaishnavite will school say, no, that's not true. Brahman is manifested as this world. There is no illusion per se. The Vaishnavite school will call it a lila. That Brahman, Ishvara creates this universe as a spot, as a lila. And it is really real. It is a real thing. Brahman Satya, Jagat Satya. So that's another difference. Now this is all I'm talking about in sort of collectively speaking Vaishnavite school, not differentiating Ramanujacharya from Madhavacharya to Vallabhacharya to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They have some distinction within themselves too. But these are all collective principles of Vaishnavite school. And the last one, all Vaishnavite school emphasize bhakti as the pathway to Ishwar. Keval Advaita, Shankaracharya said that bhakti and karma are preparatory courses and gnana is the ultimate reality. So think about it. Shankaracharya said that gnana yoga takes you to top of the Mount Everest, and the guys who are in the base camp of the Mount Everest climb are at bhakti level or karma level, but they haven't reached the peak yet. And bhakti school will reject that idea. For the simple reason is that they will say peak is not the only final salvation. Every place that you happen to be is salvation. So for them, for bhakti school, salvation is not going to the peak of the mountain. It is the process by which one climbs onto the mountain range. And salvation is call it a byproduct of the bhakti. It is not the ultimate aim. Salvation comes because you are devoted to bhakti. While Gnana Yoga will say, bhakti will take you only a specific location, will not take you all the way to the peak of the mountain. So that is the broad outlook. Now, how do you combine all these different viewpoints into some sort of harmonious way is what we are talking about now. And what we talked about is, Dinesh bhai. Tamara awaaz ban chhe.
Where does the aspect of Purusha and Prakriti come in here?
Yeah, Purusha and Prakriti are a completely different school called Sankhya school. Now, if for them, just think about Advaita Vedanta in general, what they did was saying Purusha, let me put it this way. Sankhya school say there are two entities, Purusha and Prakriti. Vedanta said Purusha is the ultimate reality, Prakriti is an emanation of Purusha. So it is only one, it is not two. So depending upon which Vedanta school you believe in, Shankaracharya will say Prakriti is just an illusion arising of Purusha.
So can you say
Yeah.
can you say Prakriti is like Maya?
Well, I mean, theoretically, yes. Prakriti is the equivalent to Maya because Prakriti does not exist by itself according to Advaita Vedanta. It is a product of a Maya. But Sankhya school will say Prakriti is real, and Vaishnava school will say Prakriti is real, but it's not duality. It is part of God.
Oh, okay.
So, and yoga, the classical school of yoga combines Purusha and Prakriti under the umbrella of God. So just think about it. If there are two tracks, Purusha and Prakriti, yoga comes on the top and connects those as a roof to make it connected together. So you can call it Vedanta essentially incorporates ideas of Sankhya school into the thought process and negated the idea there are two entities per se. There is one entity, either that entity is manifested as a universe, like in Vaishnava school, or one entity from which an illusion arises as a Prakriti, called Maya, because of Maya. So there is no such thing, there are no two things. That's basically what it is.
Rajan bhai, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So before Vaishnava school came in existence, the only school or thought was Advaita by Shankaracharya, correct? Is that right?
At least there was a Beda idea that existed several hundred years before Shankaracharya, which essentially said something both ways, Advaita way as well as Dvaita ways. So just think about it. All Vaishnavite school of Vallabhacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Nimbarka, all of them fall under a school called Bhed Abhed. That means difference but no difference. So that idea existed few hundred years before Shankaracharya came, but that was in a sort of, call it, in an infancy. And that idea was expanded further by Nimbarkacharya in around 14th century.
Yeah, so so before Vaishnava school came in existence, so there was kind of a 300-400 years of gap, right? Is that true?
Roughly speaking, yes. Yeah, you are right.
Okay.
Yeah. But remember, during this time, Buddhism was also dominant. So was Jainism.
Right.
So many of these ideas were circulating, but there was no clearly defined school per se, which will say this is what it is. And last time, remember, I think Nainabin mentioned about those who don't believe in God with the form and we talked about Jainism. So there was a scholar called Konda. He was a Digambar scholar. And he appeared around between 3rd century and 6th century, depending upon which scholar you believe in. He also advocated the same idea Shankaracharya advocated, that there are two levels of reality: empirical reality, which is what we experience, and absolute reality, which we cannot experience. Enlightened. And he basically said something similar to what Shankaracharya said.
Okay.
And that scholar was called Konda.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And he was a Jain Digambar scholar.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go forward. So Vijnana Vedanta basically began primarily it came from RMK, then came Vivekanand, then came Arvindo, and then came Mahatma Gandhi. All of them began to view all those schools in a manner that one can synthesize and create a sort of unified structure. So what happened is this. RMK wasn't really very well read or philosopher per se. He was more like a mystic. So he didn't write any books or anything, you know. But he will say things which were simplified to say Bhakti school and Gnan school and Karma school and all those things are basically same or similar, depending upon your personality, depending upon your aptitude, depending upon what you like. And there is no hierarchy per se, as Sankaracharya will say, or how Madhavacharya or Vallabhacharya will say. Because what Sankaracharya said, Madhavacharya and Vallabhacharya will reverse. It's upside down kind of thing. So RMK started saying is that, well, it depends upon your viewpoint. There is no hierarchy per se. Vivekananda initially emphasized, at least the initial part, Keval Advait point of view more so than other schools. And he believed in a sort of linear fashion is that Bhakti and Karma are preparatory for Gnana. But in the later part of his conversation, he began to use the same kind of logic as RMK used to use. You know, that depends upon your viewpoint. That is called Vijnana. And in that time, the Vijnana Vedanta word wasn't coined. It was called Neo-Vedanta. And it was devised by a scholar called Paul Hecker, a German scholar. You know, he basically tried to synthesize these things, but he gave it a negative connotation. So then Aurobindo came around 1910, 1920 or so. He started using a word called integral Vedanta or Samanvayi Vedanta. Integral means basically try to integrate different aspects. And then Gandhi, in the similar manner, started using something similar to what RMK was saying, you know, but he wasn't a scholar like theologian. So he will use, I am Advaitin, but I believe in Vaishnavite principle and that kind of thing, you know. So he will cite both of them. So over last 100 years or so, many scholars have begun to use a way that this is not necessarily hierarchical per se, but they are together. And depending upon what you like most, you can use whatever you like. And all of them will lead ultimately to emancipation. Now, Vivekananda also used something called absolute reality and salvation. He said that absolute reality has three levels, called three kinds: inclusivism, exclusivism, and pluralism. So he said that if you believe that what I believe is true and nothing else is true, it's exclusivism. If you believe mine is more important than yours, but I don't reject what you are saying, so you are okay too, but I am better, then it's inclusivism. And the pluralism is something where I am right, so you are. It is a different perspective. So he created a framework where all the three are mentioned. You know, that a classical fanatic will say, I am the only right, you are wrong. If you don't believe what I'm saying, you are wrong. Other way is looking at inclusion is something like that. I am superior, I know more than you, but okay, you are a little bit dumb, so I'll accept what you are saying is true as well. And third one is say both of us are right. So he said that all these three principles apply to understanding absolute reality, and also applies to salvation, and they are not necessarily inclusive of each other. So you can get the salvation by one, and you can be sort of call it exclusivist in absolute reality. I can say what reality I believe is absolutely true, you are wrong. But I can say even then also you will have the salvation too, because ultimately salvation is not one place. Salvation is many places. So you will reach your salvation, I'll reach my salvation. So call it twofold way. So idea is basically trying to harmonize different ideas into framework where one doesn't deny others' legitimate point, or at least doesn't say you are dumb. Call it that way. So now I'll go to the next one that the slides are. You know, so basically I was just giving the framework of where we are. Okay, so Gödel's theorem was a mathematician. He basically said that if you are within the sphere of bubble, you cannot know the reality outside. So just like because we live within the bubble of the world, what lies beyond the bubble is not something that you can see because it is not transparent. It is an opaque structure that we are within that framework. So the absolute reality or transcendental reality can be only seen or experienced if you reach enlightenment. While you are living in this world, you probably won't, except in Advaita Vedanta will say, if you are a Jivan Mukta, you will be able to experience that reality as well. But most of us will not be able to. So the point he's making is that we live within the framework of Maya. And while you are living within the framework of Maya, you will not be able to come out of Maya. So it's like if you're watching a movie and you are so involved in the movie, the character becomes happy or unhappy, starts crying, you start crying. Character is happy, you start becoming happy. And you are so involved in the movie that you do not remember that you are not the movie. You are not playing inside the movie. But that is how you perceive in the world, in the sphere of Maya. That you become the character actor within the movie that is being relayed at the same time. So that is the idea of Maya. And that is a question of matrix, virtual reality. It's like you enter the virtual reality and you are within that reality itself. In all these movies and everything that we make on the TV and video game, you are sort of part of that character within the movie. So you are within the movie, so you cannot know what is outside the movie itself. That is the idea. And somebody said something like this: when you are dreaming, you think you are in the dream as well, right? You are seeing the world, you are seeing the people, you are seeing everything, and you are there as well.
Right.
As long as you are living in that dream, you cannot know that it is a dream until you wake up. So Shankaracharya says the reality that we live in now is the dream, and we are playing the role of a character within the dream. Until you wake up in absolute reality, you will never know that you are in the dream. That is what Shankaracharya's concept of Kevala Advaita is. That is an absolute reality called Turiya. Is the absolute reality which will tell you that what you were experiencing in the earlier stage was a dream.
Okay.
So from Shankaracharya's point of view, there are 4 levels of reality. Illusory reality, which is the dream that we experience day in, day out at night. Empirical reality is what we live in.
Janaben has a question. Rajan bhai.
Yeah.
આ કોન્શિયસનેસ ના 4 લેવલ છે, એમાંનું તમે આ છેલ્લું બતાવ્યું તુરિયા.
Right.
તો એ અત્યારે કોઈ પણ સાઇન્ટમાં કે જોવા મળે ખરું?
Well, that is the experience that I'll come to that. So the next level is empiric reality, that what we experience day in, day out. So we wake up from dream to empiric reality. And the third level is absolute reality. If we were enlightened, we will experience that as well. And the fourth level is Turiya. Turiya means fourth in Sanskrit. So Turiya sees through all the 3 levels. When you are in empiric reality, you cannot experience illusory reality. When you are dreaming, you cannot experience empiric reality, vice versa, right? You cannot see both of them simultaneously. When you are in absolute reality, you cannot know the illusory reality also. And RMK mentions called Bhava Mukha, where he says something like this, that you are straddled between empiric reality and absolute reality. So you can experience both empiric reality and absolute reality simultaneously, which is called, another word is Jivana Mukta. And the fourth state is Turiya, where it's like a one-way mirror. From Turiya state, you can see all the 3. But the other side of the mirror is opaque. So from illusory reality, you cannot visualize empiric reality. From empiric reality, you cannot visualize absolute reality. From absolute reality, you cannot experience Turiya. So it's a one-way mirror. From Turiya, you can experience all of them, but going backward, you cannot. So, Janaben, did I explain that? Janaben,
Ah,
did I make clear?
I thought you may never see the Turiya in real life. I mean,
Well, you are right. The Keval Advait concept will say that Turiya state is a state that can be experienced any time if you are enlightened.
oh, okay.
Though most of the Vaishnavite school will say it can only happen when you are dead. So, Jivana Mukta concept is common in Keval Advait. Videha Mukta, that means dropping the body is when you will experience the ultimate reality of Turiya.
So, Rajan bhai,
Yeah.
basically these are the similar thing, the difference that you earlier mentioned about Dvait and Advaitya, basically, right?
Yeah,
Same.
Dvait is a Vaishnavite school. Dvait and Visishta Advait are Vaishnavite school, collectively called Vaishnavite school, but there are 4 or maybe 5 schools within the Vaishnavism. All of them believe that the classical mukti will happen when you are dead.
After the death.
Right, right. But Keval Advait will say you can while you are alive as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to the next slide.
આ સ્લાઇડ અહીંયા અમારામાં મૂવ નથી થતી આ એકની એક જ છે ગોડેલ્સ થિયરમ.
હજી નથી મૂવ કરી
એક જ હજી કરી
Ajay, ek જ મેં કરી છે. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I already explained some of those ideas, but I'm just
Okay.
going to go through slides quickly. So,
Come on,
what
next
is Maya?
Okay.
Maya is basically an illusion or an appearance. And what is that? That which exists, but is constantly changing and thus spiritually unreal. So, there are 2 words that are being used in Vedanta called Maya and a Mithya. The Mithya and Maya, there is what is a slight difference there. Mithya is Sat and Asat is another word. One is Asat, that means not true, and Sat, which is true. So often these get interchanged at times, depending upon how you view it. Now, two ways to